Picture this. You're running a massive live event on a system we'll call Streamlab. Traffic is surging, CPU usage is going through the roof, and right on cue, your horizontal pod autoscaler fires up to handle the load. Sounds like a textbook Kubernetes success story, right? Well, actually, hold that thought. We're going to dig into a major live outage to uncover exactly why Kubernetes automation does not automatically equal production stability. Let's dive in. We are going to break down the anatomy of a complete system collapse. We'll be walking through the autoscaling illusion, resource limits and scheduling, the infrastructure delay, the readiness cascade, disruptions and zone failures, and finally, we'll wrap up with a solid production checklist. So, phase one of our collapse, the autoscaling illusion. Let's follow our Streamlab application as this massive traffic spike hits. CPU utilization climbs rapidly. And as you'd expect, this triggers the horizontal pod autoscaler. It does its math, evaluates the metrics, and confidently requests 12 new replicas. The deployment instantly creates those new pod objects. But we really have to ask ourselves here, did this autoscaling actually save the system, or did it just mask a much deeper architectural failure? Here is the disconnect that catches so many of us off guard. We're conditioned to expect instant capacity. But the reality is that the HPA doesn't actually create containers or nodes. It literally just changes a desired replica count in a database. In Streamlab's case, their cluster was already running at full capacity. So those 12 shiny new pods? Yeah, they're just sitting there, stuck in that agonizing pending state, because there's absolutely no physical node available to host them. Now, because we have pending pods, the node autoscaler finally kicks in to provision new infrastructure. But while you wait, you immediately hit all these hidden bottlenecks. Provisioning new virtual machines takes minutes, not seconds. Think about it, you're waiting for the operating system to boot. You're waiting for daemon sets like your logging and monitoring agents to start up. You're waiting on network and storage plugins. And then finally, you're waiting for those massive application image layers to download over the network. And all of this is happening while your users are literally just staring at a loading screen. Which brings us to phase two, resource limits and scheduling. So while we desperately wait for those new nodes to arrive, what is happening to our original, existing pods? Well, the pressure is building. When those original pods were initially scheduled, Kubernetes used their declared resource requests, maybe half a CPU core and 512 MB of memory. But under a real-world traffic spike, the runtime reality is absolutely brutal. CPU is a compressible resource, right? It's like a traffic jam. Things just slow down to a crawl, massively spiking your latency. But memory isn't compressible. It's a cliff. The second a container exceeds its memory limit, the operating system steps in with an OM killed error and ruthlessly terminates the entire process. Now we enter phase three, the infrastructure delay. The critical issue here is that we desperately need those new nodes to relieve the immense pressure on our surviving pods, but we are completely trapped in this infrastructure delay. Just look at how this timeline maps out the wait. At T0, you request the VM. 30 seconds in, the OS is finally starting. A full minute passes before the node even registers with a control plane. Then you're still waiting for plugins to initialize, images to download, and readiness probes to finally succeed. This delay chain shows exactly why your users are getting a wall of timeouts while Kubernetes is just slowly, methodically building your promised servers in the background. And that leads right into phase four, the readiness cascade. Eventually, the infrastructure does catch up. The new nodes arrive, the new pods boot up, and you might think the incident is finally over. Actually, scratch that. This is where they inadvertently trigger the absolute most dangerous phase of the outage. Notice how scaling the API here actively destroys the entire system. Every single new API replica opens its own pool of database connections. The API layer scaled beautifully, but the database capacity? That didn't change at all. This completely exhausts the database connection pool, causing the database to choke. And because the readiness probes are checking the database, those probes start failing. Kubernetes sees this, assumes the pods are broken, and rips them out of the service rotation. This concentrates all of that massive incoming user load onto the very few remaining pods. It creates this perfect, catastrophic, positive feedback loop that takes the entire system offline. Why did this happen? It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of health checks that we see all the time in production. A readiness probe should really only ask one question. Can this instance meaningfully serve traffic? Tying that probe directly to a shared dependency, like requiring the database to be perfectly fast for the pod to be considered ready, is exactly what caused that total cascade. Because the database slowed down, Kubernetes assumed all the API pods were broken and pulled the plug on all of them. Moving on to phase 5, disruptions and zone failures. So the system is down and the engineering team is scrambling to stop the bleeding. But now they hit a whole new set of platform-level hurdles. To fix a degraded node, an operator tries to issue a standard drain command to safely move workloads and let the pods terminate gracefully. But the drain command just hangs. It does nothing. It gets completely blocked by a pod disruption budget, or PDB. Now, PDB is simply a mechanism designed to limit how many replicas of an application can be voluntarily disrupted at once, basically ensuring you maintain quorum during planned maintenance. A PDB that's set to 0 voluntary disruptions is basically a maximum operational roadblock. It blocks maintenance and node consolidation forever. But here is the critical distinction you have to remember. A PDB is utterly useless as a shield against involuntary disruptions. It cannot stop a hardware failure, it cannot stop a power loss, and it definitely cannot stop a zone outage. It only protects you against planned, coordinated evictions. And speaking of involuntary disruptions, let's say suddenly an entire availability zone fails. Now, your topology spread constraints actually did their job here. They distributed the pods across different zones, which reduced the blast radius and saved the app from a total crash. But there is a massive catch. The remaining surviving zones are already running at high utilization. They are completely full. They're too full to absorb any of the replacement pods. So the deployment creates the replacements, but they're just dumped right back into that agonizing pending state once again. Simply distributing your workloads is not enough. You absolutely must have spare failover capacity. Finally, Phase 6, the production checklist. So after eventually stabilizing the Streamlabs outage, cutting back those connection pools, and fixing the readiness probes, how do we ensure these autonomous control loops actually cooperate safely in the future? Well, you have to actively bridge the gap between your YAML configuration and your actual production reality. That means properly matching your resource sizing so that your requests reflect your actual measured baseline usage. It means ensuring your scaling limits can handle the load without completely blowing past your dependency budgets, verifying your placement rules actually allow for real spare failover capacity, and finally, making sure your health checks actually check serving ability rather than isolating failures so aggressively that they take down the whole application. You really have to remember that the Kubernetes platform is not one single intelligent operator that understands your end-to-end business logic. It's just a collection of independent control loops, the scheduler, the autoscaler, the kubelet, and they are all just blindly pursuing their own separate desired states. Because of this, Kubernetes automation does not automatically mean production stability. It's on you to orchestrate these loops so they don't amplify failures the second things go wrong. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder about your own production setups. Cluster health does not equal application health. If your platform metrics are telling you every single pod is perfectly ready, but your users are actively experiencing timeouts and a massive outage, who are your observability tools actually working for? Are you just observing your platform's illusions, or are you actually observing your users' reality?